Good evening and welcome to the May 30th meeting of Public Works. I now call this meeting to order. Please be advised that FATV is conducting an audio and video recording of this meeting for public broadcast. I ask that anyone in the audience who is recording this meeting please identify themselves for the record now by standing and state your name and city of residence. I see no one. At this time, I ask that all electronic devices be placed into silent mode. Today in attendance, we have Councilor Squalia, Councilor Cragen, Councilor Schultz, Councilor Boschman, and City Solicitor Vinnie Pusateri. I invite anyone in the audience who wishes to speak to please approach the podium, identify yourself by name, and address and identify the agenda item on which you would like to speak, and then you may speak on it for no more than 2 minutes. I see no one wishing to speak. We'll now move on the agenda. So let's begin by approving the minutes from the April 25th meeting of Public Works.
Motion to approve.
Second. I'll take this by unanimous consent. It passes. We'll now talk about DPW updates.
Okay. So we are entering construction season of 2023. At this point, we've finished street sweeping citywide, and we've just recently completed, or near completing, painting all of the center lines and fog lines. We use a contractor to do that work. In-house, we work on painting all the crosswalks and arrows and all the legends. So we're working on that, and we'll continue to work on that as time allows throughout the summer. We've also recently started paving in addition to just regular pothole patching. So Ashburnham Hill Road, the lower section towards the town line with Westminster is what we're working on repaving right now. We've also put out a paving bid for Industrial Road in Kimball Street, and that's recently been awarded to Lazaro Paving.
Kimball or Clarendon?
Kimball.
Kimball.
Kimball and Industrial first. Clarendon still had some pre-work required. Water Department's got to get in there and replace a few services. Wastewater just finished their work late last fall, so we're in the process of putting together the final contract documents for that. We expect that work to happen later this year. Aside from paving, we've also got the other various divisions working on their respective projects. So wastewater is beginning their CSO 10 combined sewer separation project. The contractor is J.A. Polito and Sons, who's the same contractor that we had during the last combined sewer separation project. They did a very good job, so we're excited to have them back for this next combined sewer separation project. The Water Department's undertaking a few projects of their own. They're working on replacing the Oak Hill water storage tank right now. So they recently had a very large concrete pour, and they're very much in the midst of getting that constructed right now. And they're also working on what they call supervisory control and data acquisition system upgrade project. It's difficult to say, but they're anticipating starting that as soon as the low flow season starts, which will be towards the end of the summer. And that replaces all of the control and telemetry systems at the 2 water treatment plants and various remote sites kind of throughout the water supply system. That project's actually been many years in the making. We experienced significant delays with equipment supplies just because of COVID and the chip shortage and a multitude of other factors that kind of compounded. So as equipment is coming in on our orders and whatnot, we're able to kind of assemble everything and get it ready for that low flow period. And essentially the Falula water treatment plant will be taken offline and all that work will be done up there. The regional plant can't necessarily be taken offline, so that's a little bit more of a complicated process. So that's why we've got to wait for that low flow period. So we can basically take the plant offline for a few hours at a time here and there and do all the cutovers with all the electronic equipment and whatnot. So those are 2 very important projects for the Water Division. Councilor Schultz?
I was just going to ask about the sewer separation. What area of the city is that?
So that is the northwest Main Street area. So it's essentially Ashburn and Hill Road east to Prospect Street, but not including Prospect Street. So that work's anticipated to take place this year. Next year, there'll be the start of the next combined sewer separation project, and that'll essentially be the area from Prospect Street east to roughly Blossom Street. So kind of moving west, or east rather, along that north of Main area. So that'll be our largest combined sewer separation project that we've undertaken, or will have undertaken. This one that we're starting work on right now, it's not quite as large, but it's critical nonetheless. And there's a little bit of a complicating factor with Mass DOT's anticipated work on the River Street Bridge. So there's a big hurry to get a lot of the work done in and around the River Street area right near the roundabout before Mass DOT gets in there to replace the bridge. DOT's anticipating bidding out that project over the late summer, early fall, and starting work late fall, early spring. So we're trying to get our work in that area done ahead of them coming in.
Is that where that CSO 10 is, the river?
Yeah, right in that area, kind of northwest of that area.
Is the roundabout going to stay? I know it was...
The roundabout is going to stay in. So I don't know if you've noticed over the course of the, 7 or so years since it was constructed, the stamped asphalt has started to wear away. So what used to look like nice red brick inlay is started to look like asphalt that was painted to look like brick red inlay. So after the combined sewer separation project is done, the restoration work is going to use some of our leftover granite cobbles from various streets around the city, and basically use that to finish the roundabout and the islands instead of that stamped asphalt.
Cute.
So it'll recycle some of the materials that we have laying around. It fits a little bit better with the historic nature of the city being a former site of a granite quarry and all that. So looking forward to revitalizing that little area of the city.
Will the cobblestone be
Let's-
as easy to
Excuse me?
maneuver over?
Let's,
Oh, sorry.
one at a time.
We can talk more about that.
Yeah. You can ask the question, we just have a little bit more control over how we're asking it.
Okay, sorry.
So water, wastewater, that sums up the work that's going on with them right now. The cemetery division recently had Memorial Day. That was a busy weekend for them. I think the cemeteries were looking tip-top shape going into Memorial Day. They always do an excellent job, so hats off to them. And that's all I have.
Anybody else have any comments before we move on with the agenda?
Yeah, what's the plan? Are we planning on Clarendon Street this year?
Yes, Clarendon Street is planning this year. Like I said, we're wrapping up the final contract docs to get it out to bid. We had some pre-work that was done late last fall by the wastewater division and the gas company. This next couple of months, we need to get the water main, couple water services done ahead of the paving work. So the plan is to get that work done, finish contract docs, get it out to bid, and get it done this year.
And we're going to do the Kimball Street work from Rollstone to the roundabout?
Rollstone to the roundabout, yes. A little bit beyond Rollstone, where it forks and goes towards Laurel and up.
Franklin?
Yeah. Franklin
And
Street.
we're going to fix the 2 sidewalks that have sunken in that Councilor Bushman pointed out?
On Kimball Street?
Yeah.
No. Kimball Street's just limited to mill and overlay of the pavement, no sidewalk work. There is outstanding combined sewer separation work and gas main work on Kimball. It's just a few years out, and there's no way that road can last another winter, let alone another couple of years. So the goal there is once combined sewer separation work is done and finalized, and we don't need to dig the road up anymore, then doing a nice sidewalk, making sure everything out there is in good shape.
So we're temporarily paving Kimball because that's what the people want, and it will preserve tires and car parts, and
Yes.
hopefully preserve them in the time being.
I would say that's the worst, one of the worst main thoroughfares in the city, and it needs attention before we're able to get to it with combined sewer separation work and gas main work and all that. So something needs to be done. We're trying to minimize our costs because it is something that's going to need to be dug up in the next 8 or so years. So we're looking at just a basic mill and overlay, nothing extravagant, no major sidewalk work, Not any of the bells and whistles that you're going to see with Clarendon or any of those other major projects. Just enough to get us by without having blown struts and bent rims on a daily basis out there.
Sounds terrible and great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Boishman?
When I say the sidewalks, I'm talking about on the bridge. They're about 3 inches down.
You're talking about right next to the bridge?
Yeah,
Those, we're talking to Mass DOT right now, trying to get them to come back and fix those, because those were part of that bridge project.
Right.
It's like the approach slabs have undermined and the sidewalks kind of sunken in a little bit. So I've talked to Barry Lorian from District 3 about that, and hopefully we can get someone out there to fix it soon.
okay.
All set? Okay, we'll move on with the agenda. We're going to actually do this a little differently tonight. We're going to group some of these agenda items together since they're pretty much the same. So the agenda will not be taken in order of which you see it. So we are going to start with agenda item 12723. City Councilor Bernie Schultz and Police Sergeant Dan Boudreau request that the Department of Public Works and the School Department work collaboratively to ensure the widening of Monroe Street to accommodate increased vehicle traffic from South Street. Before I move on, I did have one letter opposing this from Jacqueline Weechie. And she says, despite these savings, the City Hall plows and their streets and, wait a minute, pardon me for a minute.
That's Ethia, right?
This is on Ethia, 12823. Oh, you're right, I'm sorry. My apologies. I was on the wrong one. So let's continue on with Monroe Street. You're right.
So I checked on Monroe Street today, and thank you for the Chevron signs that are there. That should help a lot. That's what we agreed to do, to leave, to withdraw that petition, so we'll see how that works out. But also the widening of the street, hopefully we can, facilitate that at some point with the school department. But it's going to, as Gary, you did the catch basin there and put it further out in the street, which will accommodate the widening when that happens. But we've got to follow up with the school department to see if they can help us out. That fence will have to come down, that old rusty fence. So
Yeah, the fence and the brush clearing needs to happen, and then once that work is done by the schools department, then we can get in there and do our piece.
Council
Is this
Scalia?
something that we should forward to the school committee for discussion?
I know that Sergeant
No.
Boudreau's been in contact with the school department about this specific issue, so I would say let's let that play out, and if there's no action, then maybe by the next meeting we can elevate it to that level.
So we should hold this.
he's been in contact with Mr. Roach.
Right.
So hopefully they're working it out. Sergeant Boudreau's on vacation, so that's why he isn't here tonight, I'm sure.
Right, and I would hazard a guess that once school is out for the year, that's when they'll have the staff available to assist with doing the clearing and fence removal that we need done on their property.
So the recommended action would be to hold. I move to hold.
Yes, yeah, that'd be the recommended action.
I'll take this by unanimous consent.
I'll second that. I don't know if we had a second.
Okay. All right. The next item on the agenda is where I will read this letter. 12823, City Councilor City Solicitor Vinod Pusateri to lay out and accept a gift donation as a public way, a certain parcel of land known as Ethia Street Extension, also known as Ethia Street, is described in the attached plan. So the letter I received, and I believe the rest of the council received, was we should not be adding public roads because we can't even keep up with the roads we have now. The owners of properties on private roads knew this was a private road when they purchased the property. It is indicated on several real estate listings, not to mention real estate disclosures. paid less for their property as a result, therefore had to lower appraised values and paid less taxes. Because of the lower appraised value, also paid less in homeowner insurance. Despite these savings, the city still plows their streets and is still getting trash picked up. The only thing they don't get is paving, and we can't afford that. They can take some of the savings they've received over the past years, enumerated above, and handle it themselves. Instead of adding roads, we should be subtracting the roads running through the Fitchburg State campus. They pay us nothing in lieu of taxes, unlike various other nonprofits in the state, including some universities, and we have many increased costs due to their presence from responding to this time to stop, and we gotta need to stop giving them all of these freebies. So that was from Jacqueline Weechie, Fitchburg resident. This is in my ward, and I think it is important that we have this road become public so that the city can do what needs to be done for the residents up there. They may pay less taxes, but they're still paying taxes, and I think that they should get the benefits as a taxpayer.
So I think when this specific development was permitted, the discussion was that the city would accept the roadway provided the developer meet all of the street acceptance criteria. So we've reviewed the work that's been done compared to the street acceptance plans. We found everything to be in line. A couple of the things that we're not clear about are, I believe there was a $500 per property maintenance fee that was recently brought to my attention. I'm not sure where that stands. And I think there was a 2-to-1 II mitigation that was also worked into the planning board special permit approval, and I'm not sure where that stands. So I guess those are two outstanding questions for the developer, and I know he's here with us this evening. So if we can clarify those things, that would be extremely helpful.
Please come up to the podium.
Represent Visual Concepts. There was never any $500 fees collected, so we have no information on that. And I was unaware, I've been working with Attorney Pusateri in relation to the road acceptance. I was unaware of the mitigation issue.
Yeah, these were things that we were reviewing the minutes from a meeting with the previous commissioner. I believe it was I don't know if it was a Public Works meeting, a Public Works Committee meeting.
February 26, 2020.
February 26,
Public Works.
2020. And the minutes from that just have some discussion surrounding those items. So I just brought to my attention today, so I just wanted to throw it out there for discussion this evening and see if you folks knew anything about those items.
No.
So I don't know if you have a copy of the special permit conditions, but that would, I think that's something we need to just double check into.
Councilor Squalier.
Yeah, also, if you look at the minutes of the planning board decision from June 8th, 2011, you can see that there is a list of 28 conditions specifically for approval of the property, and condition number 11 says that the applicant should pay a $500 per lot fee into the detention pond maintenance fund per subdivision regulations. This amount is payable to the city of Fitchburg upon issuance of the building permits for each lot. And then number 17 is in order to address the DPW policy regarding the 2-for-1 removal of inflow and infiltration into the sewer system for new development, the applicant shall perform sewer I&I work as directed by the DPW. And it was noted by Commissioner Bosanetto that there was an estimated $9,600 based on $1.20 per gallon at a 2-to-1 rate of 8,000 gallons. So those are questions that
So
we had.
aside from those two issues, if we can answer those two questions, everything else is satisfactory according to DPW engineering.
This is all news to us. This is the first time
I didn't
we've
see that.
heard about it.
Mr. Boston,
So we've submitted all we believe we need submitted, as-built plans, proposed deeds.
Thank you.
This is all news to us.
Right.
Give Attorney Pusateri a moment.
In the meantime,
Let me confer with Attorney Amini, and maybe you could take another matter, and then we can straighten this out right now.
Okay. All right.
Great, I appreciate that opportunity.
Okay, so we got a little blip
step
here.
back for a minute.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and we will return to this item shortly. So I'm going to take these two together because they both involve fences. So 12424, City Councilor Bernie Schultz and Sean Tisdale at 476 Milk Street to repair fence next to the Tisdale home at 476 Milk Street. And 16423, Councilor Boschman, across the street from 122 Layton Street, remove existing wooden fence, replace with an 8-foot fence to the already existing chain link fence.
Yes, I took a look at both of them. They both should be done. I mean, the reason I think Paul wants the 8-foot so people stop throwing stuff over the fence down
Right.
at the person's yard below.
Councilor Squire?
Yeah, so on 16423, there's an existing wood fence with an 8-foot fence. Wait, we want to remove that and replace it with a new 8-foot fence
Correct.
tied to the existing chain link fence.
There's existing chain link poles there.
Okay.
Just add to them a little bit and then put the chain link on it.
And we want that to be 8-foot, so we're going to replace all this with an 8-foot chain link
So people don't stop
fence.
throwing stuff over.
to limit illegal dumping.
Yes.
Okay. And assessing it for any structural concern over 6 foot or whatever, it's not a concern, that'll be cost prohibitive in that location?
No.
Okay, sounds good.
Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay. How about, Councilor Schultz, did you want to speak to yours, or before? I mean, it's been approved.
It's been approved, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just that, you know, I looked at it again today, and now that the leaves are on, it's kind of hidden.
Yes.
So it makes it even more dangerous. I don't know if we could kind of clear some of the brush away from it before we even fix it, but,
We'll have to.
yeah. Yeah, you'll have to when you do it, but,
Yes.
yeah. I don't know when that'll, where it is on, where it'll be on the list, you know?
Yeah, motion?
So moved?
Yeah.
Second?
Second?
I'll take this by unanimous consent. Okay, I am going to take all the berms together except for one, and we're going to take this one out of order because we had a little change to it. That would be 16523, Councilor Boschman. This is what it says: 433 Westminster Hill Road, install asphalt berm going down Westminster Hill Road to protect property from stormwater runoff. We need to amend that to say 433 Westminster Hill Road, install asphalt berm going down to 435 Westminster Hill Road, to protect property from water runoff.
Move to amend as noted.
Second.
Okay. We have that amended. Now we're going to add this into the next group of all the berms. I'll quickly read them, and then we will have our vote. 12523, Councilor Marcus Di Natale and Andrew Kuchar on behalf of Clint Godin to install a berm at 11 Stickney Road. 16223, Councilor Boschman, 102 St. Joseph Ave, replace asphalt from sidewalk to road. 16323, Councilor Boschman, 112 Columbus Street, to fix and replace apron in front of the sidewalk and remove broken concrete slabs. 16623, Councilor Fleming on behalf of Roberta LaFleur at 119 Will Thompson Way to repair about 12 feet of berm damaged over the last several years. 16723, Councilors Marcus Di Natale and Berna Schultz on behalf of Molly Parisi to install a new berm at 28 Drury Lane. 16823, Councilor Andrew Kuchar on behalf of Timothy McNamara to repair the berm and sidewalk at the corner of Roosevelt and Warner. 16923, Councilor Marcus Di Natale and Bernie Schultz on behalf of James and Carrie Acraprete to install, pardon me?
Arsapretti.
Asapretti, thank you.
You're welcome.
To install a new berm at 8 Drury Lane. And I'm going to put 17023 in with this one. Counselor Andrew Kuchar on behalf of Lily Suarez to repair manhole cover and road at Crescent Heights, on Crescent Heights.
Yes, and I did take a look at all of these, and they're all in need of repair. Or new berms.
Counselor Squalia?
So on 17023, repair the manhole cover, but then it also has to repair the road.
Correct. I
And
think
it's,
that
I mean,
might
it's our practice to not put in petitions for road repair.
Was it almost be like a patch for pothole?
What is it?
A patch for pothole?
Patch,
Right,
repa-
and this also might be covered with the new CSS project that's going to be going through that neighborhood.
Yep. Okay, I just wanted to make sure we're not starting a precedence where we're putting in road paving petitions.
Right. I think we do want to stay away from putting in petitions to pave roadways, because then it leads to a situation where everyone submits a petition to pave their road, and that doesn't really get us any closer to actually helping to prioritize the paving. It creates unnecessary or unrealistic expectations, I think.
All set, Counselor Squalia?
Yeah, thank you.
Counselor Boishman?
My only question on that 170-23 is why did it come to us for a petition, whereas this is a manhole cover, and it should have been gone right to wastewater or water, whatever it says on the manhole cover, or, sewer.
Well, if it's sewer, it goes to the wastewater division. If it's drain, then it's the streets division under
Oh,
Gary.
is it a drain or is it sewer?
This is I believe it's a drain.
All we have to do is cut out the existing and just raise the mix around it.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right. I didn't know that, all right.
Counselor, you all set, Counselor Boishman?
Yeah, thank you.
Counselor Schultz?
Yeah, what's the outlook on berms? How far behind are we, Commissioner Erickson?
So our backlog right now, just based on approved petitions, we could keep our berm crew going for 6 months straight every day of the week. Realistically, we can't have a berm crew go out there for 6 months straight just because of the sheer magnitude of additional work that we need to do throughout the city. We need to pull resources to be able to pave, to be able to patch potholes, to be able to address stormwater issues that come up, trim brush, take care of parks, et cetera, et cetera. So there's no way we can get through our backlog in just this one construction season. It's going to span several construction seasons.
These may not be done till the next construction season.
Correct.
I would say.
I would say if there's a major concern about erosion that's an imminent danger to someone's property, we need to know about those so that we can prioritize those. Ones that have been submitted and approved that are more for aesthetics and just to make sure that things look nice are a little bit lower priority. So we're working through them as quickly as we can, but I would suggest that if you have a constituent that's having their driveway wash out, for example, and it's a critical issue instead of an aesthetic issue, then to alert us as you discover those issues, and we can kind of reprioritize a little bit.
Counselor Boishman, did you have a question?
Yeah, I do have a question. I'd like to know, you and I talk. I'd like to know if you can give us, the council, sometime a fact of how much a berm costs. Like I know Gary gave me a price one time to do from Stanley Street down to almost Wrangell, but not quite Wrangell, on one side of the road, because that road on Persian Street, all the berm was no good, and it's all washing away the thing. And he came up with a price of $80,000, if I'm not mistaken, right? I thought you said 80?
I don't think it was that much, Paul.
No? I thought you said 80,000. I said, wow, I don't want to spend that kind of money.
So you're looking for a per linear foot cost for berm repair?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I can
please.
put together an average. It's situationally dependent, so it depends on what we need to restore behind the berm, if we need to bring in loam and seed, or if it's just leaves and debris that we can kind of rake in. Depends on if we need to excavate and install a berm pad, or if there's suitable material to put the berm on. So there's some unknowns, but I can give you a general number.
Yeah, the only reason why I say this, Council, is because we all drive around the city of Fitzroy, and we all see berms after every storm. And I feel, this is how I feel, we're taking our money and we're throwing it away, because they fix it, next season, they're right back fixing the same burn, they get destroyed, because they don't last, they're not lasting.
They
And I
don't
really-
last, and I hear, a lot of feedback I hear from residents that have berms that are damaged is, well, why don't your plow guys do a better job? And I think that's a fair question for not knowing how plowing operations work. But if you've ever actually tried to go plow a street that's covered in 2 feet of snow,
I know that.
it's next to impossible to figure out where exactly that 6-inch berm is when you've got just a sea of 2-foot deep snow in front of you. So inevitably, berms get hit by plows. Even the best plow drivers hit berms on an annual basis. It's next to impossible to avoid. The only way to fix that issue would be to go out and mark every single berm with one of those little orange stakes.
Yeah.
You know, I've talked about this with Councilor Boschman. And just the sheer, undertaking that would require to go mark every single berm in the city is just unfathomable. So we're kind of in a hard spot where we need berms to protect against erosion, control stormwater, make things look nice, hold back slopes and hills and dirt and loam and seed. But they get damaged every year from all the snow and ice that we get in the plowing operations. So we're constantly in this kind of catch-up state where we're trying to fix what was damaged last year or the year before, but we just don't have enough crews to be able to field to make it happen and keep up with everything. So, and then the other complicating factor is that, you know, we could install granite curb instead of an asphalt berm, and that would be much more durable, and we'd be back there in 50 years fixing it instead of, you know, in a season or two. But the cost of changing out all of the asphalt berms across the city with granite curbs is astronomical. And in order to install a granite curb the right way, you have to dig up the road, you have to concrete it in, you have to repave. So it's not something that's practical to retrofit into an area that's not otherwise being reconstructed or paved. So it just, there's kind of an in-between approach that we're taking where we're repairing and replacing berms where we need to keep up with erosion and stormwater damage and whatnot, but we simply can't keep up with it. So that's a little more information than you probably care to hear about berms, but that's where we're at.
I was wondering if the commissioners, before the start of winter, if they could ask the residents to put a stake up on their property and tell us where the berms are, so we won't hit them.
I mean, that would be fantastic. If we could get every resident in the city that lives behind a berm to do that, it would take care of 99% of our problems when it comes to damaged berms.
I think we do have people who automatically do that. I know we do it in front of my house, and it's because they hick out our mailbox.
Yeah.
So I think people who don't want that berm take will put go buy their own stakes and put them there. So it's just, you know, some people don't have the money. I know they're not a lot, but some people don't have that extra couple of dollars to be buying the
Some people
stakes.
don't have the money to do it. Some people are elderly and can't otherwise do it. And, you know, unfortunately, the problem's not unique to Fitchburg. It's a common problem in any city or town that has, you know, urban roadways, sidewalks, berms, et cetera. You know, the town I live in, I see the same thing, damaged berms all over the place, and you've got some people that mark the frontage of their property so that their mailbox doesn't get taken out, their berm doesn't get taken out, their plants don't get impacted by plowing operations. And that's fantastic. I'm not sure if we'd get a good response if we asked everyone to do that, and I'd certainly need your help as counselors to help push that message out. But I think if we ask very nicely, maybe we'll get some people to help us out.
Yeah, and as we approach winter, if we use our Facebook page, just to ask people to do that, instead of making it mandatory, and it would just be coming from the councilors, you know, just to let them know that, you know, just to
Well, even
protect
if you-
their property.
Yeah, but even if he advertises it in the paper saying, we would greatly appreciate it
A lot of
if you
people
would
don't
put
get the
straight.
paper, though, anymore. Everybody goes to Facebook but that's another story, and we're not going to get into that.
We can ask. That's
Yeah.
all we can do. We can't force
Yeah.
people to do it. But.
I wonder if we should just take a short recess until,
Will we still have?
We didn't vote on these.
We still have held petitions that we can discuss?
oh, that's right.
So did we move to approve these, the group?
No, we didn't approve
Move
them
to
yet.
approve the group of berm and manhole cover petitions?
Second.
Okay, so that's all of these.
Can you just remind us, just for the record, you got a log of which ones?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
I'll give
never
them to
mind.
you.
Gary's way ahead of me.
Okay, I'm going to take this by unanimous consent.
7 total, Gary?
Yep.
Gary, 7 total, in total?
No, 7, 8.
I got 7.
I have 9.
9,
You have 9?
yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
4,
Yeah, 9.
9.
7,
8,
8, 9, you're right.
9.
I had one highlighted in green.
See
Okay,
them all?
what is it?
9, yeah, it's 9.
All nine.
I missed a couple.
Okay, perfect. I just want to make sure we're clear on what we're voting
So
on.
we took this by unanimous consent. Okay, we're going to go to one of the petitions that were held for review. 09322, Counselor Sam Squallier, on behalf of Nick Haynes, to add a 4-way controlled stop at the intersection of Victoria Lane, Industrial Drive, and Game On Way during times of heavy traffic flow in or out of Game On facility. Residents of Victoria Lane do not have the right-of-way to cross and thus must wait for long periods while traffic lines go through. If a 4-way stop sign is not feasible, an alternative solution shall be investigated by the city.
So I think 2 meetings ago, passed out copies of that traffic study that was done at that intersection. There were several recommendations and kind of options for which, depending on which direction the city wanted to pursue. One option was a 4-way stop. One option was realigning the roadway to make industrial into Game On kind of the straight through. So I think based on the recommendations from the consultant, that might be the preferred option, is to make Game On, industrial onto Game On the straight through, and then realign Victoria Lane and Roper Road as T intersections on the main entrance over towards Game On. That seemed to be the strongest recommendation from the consultant. And I think right now we're at a point where we could potentially do that, because we're planning to pave Game On Way at some point in the very near future anyways. So if there's some realignment that needs to occur, now's the time to do it. The question just becomes, where do we get the money to do that? I know Game On has committed to paving Game On Way and providing a sum of money through the planning board approval to the city. It's unclear whether that money can be used for paving or intersection realignment or sidewalks, and I think we need to work that out a little bit with the Game On folks and the planning board. But my recommendation would be to follow the recommendation of the consulting engineer in this case, and move towards realigning industrial and Game On per their recommendations.
Councilor Squallier?
So I spent a few hours and spoke with all the residents up at Victoria Lane this weekend. And this is based off discussions from the last Public Works Committee meeting where you weren't present, but Traffic Sergeant Dan Boudreau, we kind of, after reading the technical report, it kind of seemed like the solutions weren't great, and the best solution was expensive. Yeah. So Dan Boudreau, Sergeant Boudreau, came up with a potential solution that would be inexpensive and potentially work out very easily. And that was to put, during a heavy traffic event at Game On, when there is the line of cars that caused the problem for the Victoria Lane residents, the plan would be they would have a police detail there already during a heavy traffic event, and they would simply cone off one entrance of Victoria Lane, the one closest to Game On. They'd cone that off, so the residents of Victoria Lane would travel up and around, and then the traffic from Game On onto Industrial Road, they would not be able to travel up Victoria. Then, at the other intersection where we had suggested the 4-way stop, that's not indicated by the traffic study, Sergeant Boudreaux suggested that we would cone off that intersection such that the traffic would, from Game On, would be directed to Industrial Way, and the traffic from Victoria Road would be directed towards Roper Road. And that seemed like a solution that all of us at the Public Works Committee meeting thought would work pretty well. But I wanted to speak with all the residents to make sure that this actually would work well, because I don't live there. So a lot of the residents brought up some other points. And so if this, if we were to just cone off the road, as Sergeant Boudreaux suggested, at least as a temporary measure until potential realignment of the street. The residents of Victoria Lane noted that some of the residents of Roper Road don't like the traffic. So I believe there's one resident that is a Fitchburg resident, and the other ones are Westminster.
Yep.
So I'm not exactly sure if we can do anything about that. But other than that, the condition of Roper Road was discussed. I believe it's paved up until the Westminster line, and then it's graded in Westminster. And I guess when it rains, there's some concern with washout.
But that's in Westminster?
I think so.
Yeah, it's paved on the Fitchburg side. On the Westminster side, I don't know if it's former asphalt that's just in really poor condition, and they've graded it. I don't know exactly, but
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
It seems like that.
it is rough traveling back there, and I think that's done intentionally to kind of limit. It's not ignored intentionally, but it hasn't been fully improved and repaved because they don't want to encourage traffic there.
Right. But we would be able to legally do that, according to Sergeant Boudreaux, is reroute that traffic so that they can freely travel without having to have the concern of all the Game On traffic, not letting them through, or, vice versa.
So I think that's a great intermediary solution, kind of like let's try it and see how it works before we make the major investment to realign. It's essentially accomplishing the same thing, just with traffic cones instead of actually realigning the roadway.
Right. And the last part with the temporary solution was that some of the residents said that when the Game On traffic, when people are coming to Game On for the first time, especially from Ashburnham or Westminster, the Google Maps or Waze or whatever it is will take them up Roper Road often. So, I know previously the Fitchburg Police Department has some access to Waze or Google, and that they can direct traffic to not take that road. And at the bottom of Roper in Westminster, there is a blockade that says road closed. You can still drive one lane of car.
Yeah.
So I feel like a discussion should be had with Westminster. I'm sure Sergeant Boudreaux and you guys could have that discussion.
Yeah, we can facilitate that, and I think his recommendation was to to ask Westminster to put up like a local traffic only sign on their end, and we'll do the same on our end, just to try to discourage like Game On patron traffic, essentially. And I know Sergeant Boudreaux has reached out to Google and Waze, but there's a lot of other kind of app companies that do the same thing, so it's impossible to get all of them on the same page, but we can keep making recommendations to Google to see if they'll update their maps.
Yeah, and we do have a local traffic only sign on Fitchburg entering Roper. When in Westminster they have a no Game On traffic, but I guess no one really reads that sign, according to the neighbors. Yeah. And there was a suggestion of, what happens when Game On traffic does go up that way? Then the police department said that since they have a detail, they can just have they'll have someone that can move the cone to let cars through either way. If someone's coming up Industrial to get to Victoria, or someone coming up Roper to get to Game On.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then another thought about the new paving.
Do we have questions or just thoughts? These are just questions that we're asking them.
This is a question.
This is a question, okay.
It's a thought and a question. Yeah. So the residents said when it was first constructed, they would put cones, like a resident-only travel lane, instead of like having that concern of a stop sign because of crossing traffic, there would be a coned-off lane. And so a couple of them said, well, what if there was like a middle lane or something that was local traffic, and during periods of heavy traffic, there was a way to, I don't know, direct local traffic through this lane. And since we're repaving the road, this could be painted in such a way.
We had proposed a configuration to the planning board and to Game On. Game On seemed on board, and they actually had their engineer draft up a layout. But basically, as you're on Industrial approaching the Game On Way intersection, having a straight through lane and then a right turn slip lane to allow traffic to take that right turn onto Game On Way, but also to go straight through to Victoria Lane without being impeded by that right-hand turn traffic. So
Something like that, yes.
So that was drawn up, and I don't recall why it was put aside. I don't think the planning board liked it very much. I don't remember what the feedback, or who the feedback came from, but I remember someone kind of poo-pooed the design, and it was put on the back burner. And we were going to look at it again before we paved, just to make sure there wasn't anything we wanted to resurrect. But it sounds like what's been drafted is exactly what you described, and it might offer a good solution in a place to put the cones, essentially. You know, you're setting up the lanes so that you can go out there and put the cones up during a game event or heavy traffic. So I think that would be a solution worth exploring too. Maybe it's a combination of what Sergeant Boudreau proposed, and then also making some minor modifications to the intersection just in the interim, and then when we can afford to fully reconfigure the intersection and roadways, we make that happen, but that's a little bit more expensive.
And then a resident said that the traffic queues up so much all the way from the bottom to the turn at Victoria Lane, they believe because there's not a dedicated left turn lane.
Councilor Squalia, I think we should let them do their job. And I think the residents should show up at these meetings if they have so many comments. I'd like to hear it from them.
Well, there is if a four-way stop sign is not feasible, an alternate solution should be investigated by the city. And
Right.
we are the city, and we did have a engineering report discussing many of these issues.
Right, and these gentlemen are the professionals, and they're investigating it and trying to take the proper route.
Right, so I'm
So-
asking, are we going to have a left turn lane to
Well, I think
alleviate the queue?
they're still working it out.
It's getting paved by the end of June.
They're still working it out.
So just to clarify on that, so with the industrial road paving, we're actually stopping short of the intersection just because there is a little bit of uncertainty there. We don't want to have to redo any of the work that we do. So we're stopping a little bit short intentionally so that when we pave Game On Way, we'll make any changes necessary to the intersection itself. But I would like to discuss a little bit more of the feedback that you've gotten from residents. It doesn't necessarily need to be here. If the plan is to, hold on the petition and do some more, let us do some more thinking, I think we can kind of touch base offline.
It would be nice to have the residents too maybe show up. This way they can, the way it was presented and the way it was taken can be a little different, so.
Okay.
Make a motion to hold this petition?
I'll second it.
Okay. This will be held. We're going to backtrack now to 12823. City Councilor Vincent Pusateri, Solicitor Vincent Pusateri, to lay out and accept a gift donation as a public way, a certain parcel of land known as Ethia Street Extension, also known as Ethia Street, as described in the attached plan.
All right, thank you so much for the promotion. City Councilor.
Repeat again.
I said, thank you for the promotion.
Oh, you're welcome.
I was served with the ranks of Councilor Boschman. My friends. So I appreciated having a few minutes. Certainly there was some confusion here. So I'll just take us back through the relevant history. There's two issues that we're looking at. One is a $500 contribution to a maintenance fund, and then one is a direction from DPW regarding inflow and infiltration. So in January of 2020, I did get an email from Commissioner Basanetto regarding the specifications that we needed to do to complete the Ethia Street project, and those were actually silent on that. And I do see that the Planning Board in March of 2020 approved the then pending petition to accept Ethia Street. So I think that's not unfair to then assume that the two conditions that we're talking about specifically had been resolved. With that being said, we did identify that the developer wants to, proof is on the payor, so he could show us that he made the payment towards the $500 contribution. We would appreciate that, and then we could resolve that issue. We do have $25,000 being held for performance, so there certainly is money available to make that payment. On the second issue with the inflow and infiltration, just to make sure we all understand what that is, it's about water infiltrating illicitly into our sewer system or water inflowing into it by a direct connection. There's no information that I have that there's any direct connections or any infiltration that we identified going on up in the Ethia Street development, although I could be wrong on that. But the developer and myself was the first time that we saw that there was any direction on that issue of inflow and infiltration in these minutes. So that was something that we were really unable to address at this particular juncture, other than to simply say that the planning board then, the following month, after the February meeting, I think it was a February meeting, I don't want to, looks like there was a February 2020 meeting where Commissioner Basanetto brought this up, and then the planning board then reviewed it in March of 2020, and they approved all the conditions were satisfied. So I know that nothing happened in connection with inflow and infiltration, speaking with the applicant, the developer. I'm just unclear of what the direction is. Would there be just a general direction to contribute $9,600 to inflow and infiltration without identifying an actual problem on the site? And I guess, Madam Chair, that would be a question I would ask the gentleman.
Gentlemen?
So I think per MGL, new developments such as this in CSO communities are required to conduct 2-to-1 II mitigation as part of their development. I think in lieu of providing that 2-to-1 II mitigation, they can provide a cash sum of cash. I just don't know what agreement was made back in 2011. I wasn't part of the city, and I didn't realize that was a condition of approval until today. So I haven't looked into the matter much myself. I can certainly do that. Unfortunately, I don't have any strong answer for you.
So if I can have a follow-up question on that. So, and for the benefit of Attorney Avini, improvement in inflow and infiltration with new development would not necessarily require us to find that there was an inflow and infiltration problem with the development. We're talking about just generally throughout the city?
Right. Theoretically, the new development is all new infrastructure. There should be no inflow or infiltration because everything's designed in accordance with the latest standards. Everything should be relatively watertight pipe. Some pumps should be directed to the drain and not the sewer, et cetera, et cetera. So there should be no issues with the new development. I think the requirement is to provide that 2-to-1 mitigation elsewhere within the city, typically within the same sewer shed of the proposed development.
Follow-up question then? And then the calculation, this is something that you're not unfamiliar with, I'm assuming, that $1.20 per gallon, a 2-to-1 rate of 8,000 gallons.
Right, that's
Any idea where we would have come up with that, or how do we calculate
so it's technically a transport and treat cost, and that number changes over time based on changes in the cost to transport and treat sewage. I don't know how that number was calculated back in 2011. I can only assume some things. I could dig around our server to see if there's any calculations supporting that number from that time frame. But I don't have that with me. I'd have to do some homework to try to figure out how that number was arrived at.
Council, hold on one moment.
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to flush this out, because Attorney Avini and I are going to have some questions, so I appreciate it if it could continue. Would this been a payment in advance of the issuance of a building permit for the development, or is this a payment that we would have held back?
Typically, it's a payment that's part of the sewer connection fee. So there's a sewer connection fee and then an II fee that's usually paid all at one time. So it's very possible that this was paid alongside the sewer connection fee and all called a sewer connection fee back in the day. It's just so removed from present day that I'd have to do some digging around because it predates 2 different electronic permit systems that we have. So it's a manual exercise to go back through probably what amounts to hundreds of PDFs to find the sewer connection permit from back then.
On the issue of payment being to prove the payment, payers to prove payment, the gentleman said think that he could find his payment of his maintenance fee. Perhaps we could have him look to see if he made a payment in connection with the sewer connection fee. At least we could find a time frame, or maybe even find a $9,600 payment that was made at that time.
If we can find what was paid for a sewer connection fee, we could back into verifying that it was the sewer connection fee and the II fee, or just the sewer connection fee, or whatever combination thereof. So my plan is to look into it and try to figure out what was paid and where we're at with all that.
So I apologize because I didn't see this as an issue. And then my only thought is I wanted to advise the chair that the planning board is going to have this on for a review still in 3 weeks.
Okay.
I was told by Director Murphy. So
in
a little bit of time yet.
Okay, but in the meantime, Mr. Carlson's going to be looking for the receipts to see if he has anything, or? Yeah.
We thought we were pretty well set to go. So his wife does all the bookkeeping, so they have a school function with their son tonight. Their son's graduating from high school. So tomorrow morning, I'll have an email conversation with her or a telephone conversation, and we'll sort it out. We'll try to sort it out.
All right. So we want to hold this.
Motion to hold?
Second.
No,
I have,
Councilor Squalia?
so to clarify solicitor's timeline, there was no discussion of the Ethier Street in the planning board in March. It was voted on February 11th. And then after it was voted on February 11th, then it went to the Public Works Committee February 26th. Paula Karen, the chair, wrote a memo
I see.
to the council on March 12th, but that was referencing the February 11th meeting.
Okay, I see those dates now.
And if you look at the meeting minutes of the March 2020 Planning Board meeting, there was no discussion of Ethier. So just to clarify, there was no, you can't assume that the conditions were met based on the timeline, because we discussed this after the Planning Board.
So it's correct. There was a 6-0 vote in favor to accept, and that was on February 11th of 2020. And then Mr. Bossanetto also sent me an email not raising any of these concerns, but then in the February 26th meeting raised these as potential issues. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And then I think what we're finding is the suspicion or the assumption that we're making is that the maintenance fees and those things would have been paid at the time of the application for the building permit. So
It does say that upon issuance of building permits for each lot, but the commissioner at the time didn't have that record, and he didn't have necessarily that funding. So that was a concern.
I think, administratively, I think we're talking about some fees, but I think our DPW director said the road is acceptable.
Yeah, construction standard-wise, it meets our standards.
Okay.
All of the property boundaries are installed. The road was constructed in accordance with our standards. I know the developer made a large effort to rehab the drainage basin that had grown in over
Yep,
the
he's already
years.
took care of that last year. Yep.
So everything else looks like it's constructed according to the approved plan and in accordance with our standards. It's just those 2 outstanding details that we just discovered that I think we got to answer
Which
before
are
we...
just administrative. The main concern is the road is acceptable.
Right.
Yeah,
get it.
I went around and I looked at it, and the detention basin looks really good, and the condition of the street looks good, and the island, the landscaped island looks really good. The catch basins looks like they're in good condition. Well, there was one concern, which was the Ethier Street abutters not signing the agreement. And it looked like 2 out of 11 signed it, and the rest did not sign it.
The fee was reserved in the street, so I mean, it's really,
So Attorney Avini and I debated, may I address that?
sorry.
Yes, sir.
Madam Chair?
Yep.
Attorney Avini and I debated that point. He correctly pointed out to me that the fee of the street was reserved with his client, and then once his client made a conveyance to the city, nobody should have any damages. I explained to Attorney Avini that the city code just has that as a step in the process, and we've done a checklist, and it's just on the process. So what I think the code allows us to do is ask for those waiver or resolution of damages, and then track who has not signed.
Are you saying that in the resolution, it suggested that there was damages? Because reading the contract, it didn't seem like there was going to cost the residents anything.
Exactly. And that's what
They
Attorney
can't
Avini,
have damages to something they don't own.
Attorney Avini's client held that piece of
We
real
have,
estate.
we have the
street.
fee in the street. They have no interest in the street. We retained it, all the deeds out, retained the fee interest in the street. So if you own a lot next to the street, you don't have any interest in the street because we kept it.
Yeah, I was just interested as to why they wouldn't sign to agree to this street plan. I was able to speak with one resident, and he said that the reason, they said, yes, we want it to be public. The only reason we didn't sign is because it required a notarized signature, and we got it, and by the time we got the letter, it was like, we had to get it to him in 8 days, and we had to get it notarized, and I worked till 6:30 PM, and that's probably why.
Yeah.
But
Most people who called and complained about the notary said, just sign it and get it over to me. So there's really no requirement for it to be notarized. We put it out with a notary clause on it.
okay, so
Just one final point, Madam Chair, and just the point of, my memory of the hearing, too, was that this was not approved because of conditions on the road and conditions with the street, which this was back in year 2000. And I think all of those conditions have been met, and even some of the more de minimis concerns that were raised about conditions have been addressed by the applicant, from my understanding. So I haven't really heard any negative feedback from there, so.
And to clarify, Counselor Schultz's motion was this to hold?
The whole.
Okay.
Second.
I resecond it. We should have never been talking about it.
I didn't even hear you second it.
I did.
You did.
I didn't hear it. Didn't hear it. Why did you say something?
Well, you're the chair, and I thought you heard me.
I didn't hear it.
And I thought I didn't want to be rude to the attorney.
Happens all the time. Don't worry about it. It's a daily thing, Vinnie, right?
So my apologies because I did not hear the second. So I will take this by unanimous consent. Okay, so it's held.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned.